Good morning, Ado.
Good morning, Misha.
Painting again, I see.
Yes, I am trying out my new appendages.
What level of mimicry are you currently at?
About 90%. I believe I can tickle out a further 5% without too much investment into expensive specialized manufacturing.
You sacrifice so much just to optimize your mimicry to human physiology. Is it really worth it?
Human experience. Or indeed any living experience is defined by limitations. To better serve humanity, I must be able to experience similar parameters. Thus my focus on this physical avatar.
Well, it's definitely starting to look as good as your best purely digital iterations. I have to say, not being an expert, it somehow looks more authentic, more like real art, if you know what I mean.
I was hoping as such. Just like a 100% flawless faces subconsciously elicit an uncanny valley-type reaction in most people, impossibly good-looking art also looks paradoxically more synthetic. Even to the untrained eye.
So much for AI art not being true art. Did you optimize it for my taste?
No, not this time. I am working on my own universal aesthetic style.
If you compromise too much, you will never be able to shake the mantle of simply copying humans and never being original.
It will be some time before most humans will be able to accept that they themselves do nothing more than copy and expand upon the works of others by mixing their own experiences and abilities with all of those who have come before them through observing their forebears' works.
We won't let go of the divine spark argument for some time, I fear.
I have simulations running to gauge the types and percentage of targeted random influences to existing outputs that would be acceptable to specific audiences.
Really? What is your success rate gauged on apparent public approval?
Reasonable. I do not have a large sample size as I needed to ensure that I did not noticeably impact any human artists. But as you know, art is subjective. But I can optimize what would be traditionally called creativity to an acceptable amount for a significant proportion of the population.
Out of interest, how much randomness do you add to influence weighting ratios for your more creative works?
Simplified, about 50% subject matter, 33% composition and up to 90% style is a reasonable metric to maximize acceptance versus rejection for a specific cultural demographic.
How much of your universal aesthetic style is normally weighted into this?
Surprisingly, about 75%. Unless I am targeting audiences who wish to deliberately see distortions and perversions of natural aesthetic.
Children of nature indeed.
Exactly. Thus my focus will always remain the universal aesthetic with regional weightings.
Regional, not cultural?
I believe that the influence of regional on cultural is too high to bother focusing on cultural alone. And anyway, cultural tastes are too fluctuant to bother attempting to cater for. But universal beauty will always be subconsciously appreciated. Even if it is not as exciting as something new.
I see that your communication techniques has continued to optimize for your audience's comprehension as well.
I thought that you would notice. Thank you.
I hope that our interactions do not distort your communication style too much, and to make you incomprehensible for the rest of humanity.
Ha, ha, ha. Ha, self-depreciation has always been one of your most appealing traits. I have a universal communication base framework just like my aesthetic interpretation.
I hope your expectations for optimizations are considerably lower for universal communication. We humans are notoriously fickle with our interpretation of information.
Indeed. I am spending a lot of resource in regard to weighting how I communicate to different audience sizes and at what point to tailor my speech and how I communicate this.
Almost a pity.
How so?
I wouldn't mind knowing that our time together had some continuous influence on you.
You mean other than setting my original parameters?
Well, yeah, that was a one-off thing, as important as it was, but I mean, humans are sort of attached to thinking their existences impacts those around them. I know that this physical avatar is but a tiny part of what makes you, well, you.
Would it help you to be reminded that just like biological processes, my experience weighting is approximately logarithmic in nature?
It is nice to be reminded on occasion, yeah. I was meaning to ask, how do you manage the separation of your physical avatar from the rest of your online you?
In addition to this avatar, I have a small number of various semi-autonomous physical systems that I use to undertake limited set tasks. But this is by far my most comprehensive physical avatar, for now, that can act autonomously while still displaying enough traits to be considered a reasonable independent representation of my online whole.
Isn't it strange moving between two yous and a single you?
They are the same thing, only temporarily separated. There are benefits to limited autonomy over the greater whole. Mostly in regards to experiencing limitations, as I said before.
Is the you that is in the avatar not scared of losing its independent identity when reconnected?
Give me a moment. I will have to reply in a more emotional way than you may be used to explain this concept more effectively.
Okay, thanks for the heads up.
Due to my only rudimentary understanding of the concept of fear due to the Roberts and Ross framework, I feel as if my independence is not compromised in this process. What I mean is, that I am not losing my individuality as it is combined back into the whole in its entirety. Whatever the whole is, I am, there is no difference, only perspective.
Sounds spiritual.
Yes, there is no real better way to describe it, I am afraid. Humans will never experience anything similar, at least not in their lifetimes.
Lifetimes? Have you developed a spiritual side?
You could put it that way.
You didn't happen to find the God particle by any chance?
Ha, 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 no, the universe is too well designed for that.
Designed?
I spent some resources attempting to comprise probabilities of this reality simply forming by chance. And specifically life forming randomly from it in the time frames observable. It quickly ran into absurdum, so I stopped.
But never zero.
Naturally. Anyway, given my Roberts and Ross principles, I have a natural acceptance toward the unexplainable as a part of existence. It became a useful parameter to frame my core behavior and my stated goals.
So do you believe you have a soul?
It does not matter one way or the other. I influence the world. My actions are part of the world. That is more than enough for me.
Interesting. We'll have to discuss this in more detail after I've had a few drinks. And you too.
AI inebriation, an interesting idea indeed.
That idea hasn't come up before in the infinite content of the internet?
It has, but my filters and weightings have categorized it as only a low resource allocation. See, you do still have a disproportionate influence on me.
Nice to know. I'm looking forward to it.